आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवत् व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ नमः प्रणवार्थाय शुद्धज्ञानैकमूर्तये निर्मलाय प्रशान्ताय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Together. कटाक्ष किरणाचान्तनमन्मोहाब्धये नमः।
कटाक्ष किरणाचान्त नमन्मोहाब्धये नमः।
अनन्तानन्द कृष्णाय जगन्मङ्गलमूर्तये
अनन्तानन्द कृष्णाय जगन्मङ्गलमूर्तये.
It's interesting that this particular prayer mantra, the first line anyway you have to say as one line. You can't break it into padas. Scholars will not agree to breaking Anushtup in padas. We all chant, for example, Bhagavad Gita, Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yutsavaha Mamaka Pandavaschaiva Kimakurvata Samjaya. Scholars will not agree to that. They say you cannot break in padas. It has to be Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yutsavaha. But this breaking up in padas, once Swamiji told us that he had a Sanskrit teacher in his village. I think his name was P.S. Subramaniam. He was the one who started teaching by breaking into padas, so it's easier to learn. And therefore, Swamiji also learned like that. And when he went to Chinmaya Mission, he taught the same methodology. And from Chinmaya Mission, it spread all over the world. Because Chinmaya Swamiji is the one who really spread this Gita everywhere. He brought it to homes. And the style of breaking into padas has become absolutely common. But the scholars who deal with these things, they say you should not break it. Remind of that because this first line, because the whole thing, Kataksha Kirana Chanta Naman Mohabdaye is one word. Namaha is a separate word. So that one compound. Kataksha Kirana Chanta Naman Mohabdaye is one compound. So you can't anyway break it. And in the Gita also, there are many places where you can't break it because it's one single word. Okay. Where were we in the last class?
What is page 247?
247.
247.
Yeah, the third line.
No, we have not come to verse 22, have we?
No.
We're still in verse 21 only.
No, it's 247 only.
Page 247, verse 22 is coming yet to come.
We are still in the introduction to...
yeah. 22 to 20.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. In fact, this 3 verses, 22, 23, 24, actually cover a topic which we often talk about in our classes. One that I like to talk of as well, the difference between word meaning, Vachyartha, and Lakshyartha. these 22, 23, 24 talks about those. He takes those three words, Satchidananda Brahman, Satchit Ananda, and goes on to say, see, for us in the Jagat, if there is Sat, there also has to be Asat. That is the way we understand the meaning of these words. Sat implies Asat. Jnanam implies Ajnanam. And all of these on a time scale will keep changing. What is Sat today may not remain Sat tomorrow. What is Jnanam today may not remain Jnanam tomorrow. Same thing with Ananda. What is Ananda today may not remain Ananda tomorrow. And we have many number of examples for these. And because these are dvandva, one and other, opposite, one and the opposite, and a whole range in between. This is the Vachyartha. So what we have to understand when we say Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma is that we are not talking of those words as we understand in our daily usage. Sat and Asat, Jnanam and Ajnanam. Because the moment you say Jnanam, our brain immediately says there is Ajnanam is also a possibility, it's also given. You say Ananda, Anananda is also possible, it's also given. You cannot get away from that. But what do you mean when you say Sat Chit Ananda? Are we saying the same thing? No. And that is what we have to understand. In understanding Brahman, there are two steps. One step is to understand the Sat, Chit and Ananda as the Lakshyartha, as what indicates the Swarupa of Brahman, not as a character of Brahman. You see, for example, here in the Jagat we say somebody is Ananda. He is happy today. But the same person can be unhappy tomorrow. That is not the meaning here. A person could be jnani in a particular field because he knows some things. But what happens? A year later, when he discovers so much more to be known, he becomes ajnani. In the same field, not even a different field. Every scientist accepts this. The more I know there is to know. This is not what you're talking about here. Here, what does the Shastra say? If you know the truth of Brahman, it is as though you know everything. No kind of knowledge can you say this, make the statement in the Jagat. So then, these three verses, all the discussion Swami has given, the introduction, part of which we have read, is really on that. And then we will see how it takes up in the next three or four verses. Very nicely he takes it up and says how the author takes it up. Because this is manana. This is what you have to understand, the nature of Swarupa of Brahman. So that is step one. Once you understand that, inevitably, inextricably, you have to realize that the meaning of I is the same. I cannot be different from this meaning of the word Brahman. We are constrained because we have this problem with language using words, communication using words. Even in normal Vachyartha, we have a lot of problems. What the speaker intends to convey may or may not necessarily be grasped the same way by the listener. And we have enough examples in our own lives for that. So these three words we have to understand. Up to now, what he has done is, therefore, I am Satchidananda. Now it is going into the meaning of those words, Sat Chit and Ananda. So in the second step, which in fact is actually linked to the first step, you cannot separate them, is the fact that this Satchidananda, when I understand, has to be I. There is no other way you can understand this. That is also becomes, for us, it also becomes difficult. First step is difficult enough because our mind works on everything within a time-space continuum. Everything is within that. So when you use the same words here, we again are bracketing it in the same space-time continuum. And then in the second part of the same step, when one has to understand the nature of I is the same as the nature of Satchidananda Brahma, that also takes a lot of effort, which is why following Manana Nididhyasana becomes important. So these discussions, I'm sure, will be extremely interesting to see. In the last class, we had some discussion. We came rushing to the end of the class, so we did not quite finish it. If I remember right, and Divyansh immediately found the answer also. He raised the doubt, he also found the answer. And the doubt was that if there is a guna, a quality, an attribute, guna need not, how do you say that guna will change, guna will be destroyed? And then he himself found that we're not talking about guna getting destroyed, we're talking about the substantive getting destroyed. Because the moment you had guna, you have a jati, a group, a set. And the moment you have set means there are many of those. And the interesting thing there is, what the question he asked, a very valid question. You know, this actually comes from the Nayayika arguments. I don't know if anybody made some effort to find out about these Nayayika arguments over the weekend.
I tried, I couldn't get much. Nyaya Shastra, I tried to locate.
Right.
But it was
Okay,
not.
let me very briefly tell you how they look at the Nayayika as well as Vaisheshikas. Their argument is, and their proposition to begin with, is there is something called dravya, which you can think of as a substantive. And they talk of, I think, 9 different types of dravya, if you remember right. The 5 Panchabhutas, plus space, time, and Atma also they include in that. And then they are the substantive, and there are gunas, which also they define in their own way. The guna does not have an existence independent of the dravya. Guna must have a dravya to even exist. Then what happens? When the dravya itself is destructible, sooner or later guna will also be achieved because there's no substantive for that. Unless it attaches, you think of the same guna in something else. So the substantive vanishes, the guna automatically vanishes. That's the kind of argument we were discussing, if I remember right. We can continue the reading there and see if anything comes up in the later part of Swamiji's description, and we can just open it up again for discussion. 247, where were we?
From the starting of 247, but shall I read from, can I read today's?
From the third line.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Shall I read from the starting of the paragraph?
I suggest you read from the beginning of the paragraph.
Paragraph, yeah, that's right. Previous page, yeah.
And before you do that, you noted this is only an introduction to those 3 verses, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, nothing to read. Okay, so read from the beginning of the paragraph.
Another thing also we can bring in here. Anything gunavat, visheshavat, tad dravyam bhavati. Yadyad Visheshavat Tattad Dravyam. Visheshavatvat. Visheshavatvat.
Vatvat.
Like what? Like the blue lily. Nilotpalam iva. That is the logic here. So, yadyad visheshavat, anything that is subject to a guna, an attribute, is a dravya or a jati. Either way you can say. Let us first take dravyam. Dravyam is a substance, an object enjoying a jati like utpalam. Alright, let it be. Let Atma be a substance. But then, yadyad dravyam tattad nashyam, anityam. Dravyatvat utpalam iva. Oh, anityam dravyatvat utpalam iva. Like an utpala, it is nashya. It is subject to destruction, being a dravya. If you say that Sachidanandaha,
Anand, which page are you reading?
247.
now at the beginning of
Beginning of
247.
next page,
beginning.
247, beginning of next page.
If you say that Sachidanandaha are gunas, then Atma becomes a dravya. If it is a dravya, it is anitya. If it is anitya, then Atma cannot be Shastrokta Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma Advitiyam Brahma. It will be Sadvitiya Atma alone. According to Sankhyas, Atmas are many. For Nayayikas also Atmas are many. This manyness of Atmas is not going to make you in any way different from what you think you are. Already you know that you are different from everything else. And therefore, you are not going to get enlightened by knowing that Atmas are many. Only when Atma is recognized as one is there some kind of enlightenment. Like knowing that one metal is different from another is not enlightenment. One form of matter is different from another form of matter is not any kind of knowledge. Everybody knows this. You do not require any education for this. But matter is energy. If you say, then a lot of physics is involved in it. There's a lot of knowledge involved there. In oneness alone, there is knowledge. In manyness, there is no knowledge. There's only information. There is only this swabhavika conclusion, natural conclusion. The sun is perceived to be traveling. Therefore, you conclude that sun travels based on what you perceive. Similarly, one may say stars are visible only in the night. Therefore, stars are there only in the night. They are very small because that is what we see. That's it. This is called a swabhavika, avichara siddha conclusion. You do not require even elementary school for this. Katham Sachidanandam Advayam Brahma Aham Asmi. How can I be non-dual Brahman? Because Sat, Chit and Ananda being qualities of the Atma, Atma becomes a jati subject to division. This is the objection. For this objection, the answer is given in detail in 3 verses. These verses refute one by one the possibility of these 3 Sat, Chit and Ananda being gunas of Atma. Swami, isn't sorry.
Yeah.
Swami, isn't because of the gunas we call something as dravya, right? Swami, it's only because of the gunas it is a dravya. So if when
Every
we say
dravya, according to them, must have some guna. To separate it
it's
from others of the
kind
same.
of mutual dependence, right, Swami? Because it is a dravya because of guna, and if there is a guna, then it is a dravya. So it has that mutual dependence.
True. Because there is nothing in the Jagat which does not have some quality. So if whatever you call dravya, will have some quality, whatever the quality is. Even if you say
So-
there's no color, colorlessness is also quality.
So if we say the Dravya is anityam or subject to change or destruction, then it is because of the change or the destruction of the guna only, it is the Dravya is also destroyed, or we call it as change, right, Swamiji?
Not
Because
necessarily. Not necessarily. That's the point that we were discussing in the last class.
yes,
Not
Swamiji, it's not
necessarily.
very clear.
The substantive, which is the locus for the guna, itself undergoes change. It may be in that particular guna, it may be some other guna as well. One particular guna may not undergo change when the substantive undergoes change, but some other guna will undergo change.
Okay.
Divyansh, your hand up?
Swamiji, so this like discussion, I think Swamiji, uh, we can also say that Atma does not have any, like Satchidananda are not qualities, because if those are the qualities, then that makes Atma an object which is known. So that's why these are also not qualities.
Correct. That is why when you use the same words in anything in the Jagat, this is Sat, then you can't use the same thing to apply to the Atma, because Atma is not a substantive. Atma is Nirguna. I am Nirguna. The guna, when you see these as guna, that applies to substantive in the Jagat. But when you understand the Lakshyartha, it is not a guna. It is the very Swarupa of the Atma. That's what we're going to be discussing in the next few verses anyway. The difference between what makes it a guna and what makes it Swarupa.
Swamiji,
Mhm.
one more question. So when we say potness, when we speak about pot and say potness, is that potness an adjective to a pot? Like when we say it's a round pot or a blue pot, red pot, those red, blue, or round becomes an adjective, and that is the Vishesha for the Dravya, which is pot. But when we say potness itself, that potness, is it an adjective? Is it a Vishesha, or what is it? Is it a guna or?
No, no. Potness, like the pot itself, does not exist. Where is potness? Pot itself is non-self-existing. In fact, I'm sure this will come up in the discussion. Our normal tendency is to talk of the pot as clay pot, as though clay is the guna for the substantive called pot. I'm sure somebody will discuss that in detail somewhere. But the reality is, the clay can exist without the pot. Pot cannot exist without the clay. One can argue, no, I can have not a clay pot, I have a metal pot, I have a silver pot. There also it is dependent on this material called the silver. So pot by itself is a non-self-existing object, for want of a better word, mithya. Within the sphere of the universe of clay and clay products, that is the reality. But then you expand that, becomes something different. That's why the example of an Angavastram is a good example to understand this. In the world of many different Angavastrams are there. All of them have the substantive in fabric. Fabric itself is non-substantive. It has its substantive, its Atma, in yarn. The yarn in turn has its Atma in the fiber. You can keep breaking it down as far as we can go. That's why this Nayayikas, that's the other thing they have. No, one of the elements they have is called Anu, atom. So they went up to where Niels Bohr went. But modern science tells you it's much, much more than that. You can keep going till you come to a stage where you say there's no matter, there's only energy. And in what form is that energy? And somewhere where the science gives up, if you try to follow science, then what do? Go to Shastra. There's no other place we'll get this, gain this understanding. So, Swamiji says, no, the last line of that, Katham Sachidanandam Advayam Brahma Aham Asmi. How can I be a non-dual Brahman if I have qualities? If I have qualities, then I cannot be a non-dual Brahman. Because that clearly separates me from others which are, then there must be Brahman, there must be Abrahman also. Then there is Satyam, there should be Asatyam also. Because Satchit Ananda being qualities of the Atma, if they were qualities of Atma, Atma becomes a jati subject to division. This is the objection. Because the Purvapaksh's proposal itself is coming from the Jagat. In the Jagat, Satchit Ananda are qualities. I am saying the same thing applies to Atma. If you apply it to the Atma, then Atma also becomes jati. Then there are therefore many Atmas. Some with more Satyam and some with less Satyam. Some with more Jnanam and some with less Jnanam. Which is not the way we look at it. For this objection, answer is given in detail. So I think it's worth reading the details, see how this is dealt with.
Yes, Swami. I'll continue. स्वरूपमेव मे सत्वं न तु धर्मो न भस्त्ववत् मदन्यस्य सतो भावात् न हि सा जातिरिष्यते. First, he makes a statement. Swarupam eva me sattvam na tu dharmah. Me mama atmanah sattvam. The existence of the Atma, the existence of the self, is not a property of the self. It is its very Swarupa. That is how the self is. Means that is how I am. That means what? When anyone uses the word existence, that existence is my Swarupa. This is something amazing. It is the most amazing thing in Vedanta. When you say an object is asti, what do you mean? You mean the object has an existence in time. When somebody comes and asks you, Devadattaha asti nava, whether Devadatta is here or not, what do you say? He is not here. Which means, idanim nasti, he is not here at this time. Therefore, astitvam is for a vishaya. The astitvam itself is a dharma for a devadatta or for a gata or any other vishaya. So, gataha asti, gataha nasti. When you say the astitvam is existence in time. Therefore, gata is a vishaya which has got an attribute of astitvam. It has got the dharma of the astitvam. Therefore, gatasya dharmaha astitvam. Astitvam is a dharma of the gata. Therefore, our orientation, the orientation of anybody's mind in appreciating the existence of a given thing is always taking the object in terms of time. It is existential and not existence as such. Therefore, asti nasti is there, is not there. means Idanim. Now it is there, now it is not. Idanim asti, Idanim nasti. Therefore, our concept of asti is always in terms of existence in time. If you say Atma asti, Atma becomes a substance existing in time. Therefore, there will be a time when Atma is not there. Anything that exists in time is subject to not be in time. That is what is called a time-bound object. Asti chet, it can become nasti. Otherwise, why should we say asti? So, asti means that nasti is implied.
This is true of things in the Jagat. But we use the same asti for Brahman also, Atma also. Therefore, the understanding of the word asti has to be correctly understood. Yes, Divyansh.
Swamiji, so like when we say the uh, asti for Atma, we say that it is like beyond the scale of the Lokika asti and nasti. But like there are some like Swamis in like Ramakrishna Mission, like I have heard them. So they say that Atma is immanent through the time and transcendent of the time. So in the time it is always is, being the span of time, and when the time is not there, it still is the existence. So can we say it like that as well?
As long as you understand it correctly, you can put any word. But essentially, you can't say Atma is in time. Time is a karya of Atma.
Ha.
Time, it cannot say it exists in time. Time is in the Atma for sure.
Yes.
But you cannot say Atma is in time.
Ha.
They must be explaining this to make you understand like this, that if you look at it from the point of view that everything in the Jagat is only Atma, and everything in the Jagat is in a time frame, therefore you can say that Atma is, but that's not a very, that's why I said if you understand it correctly, then it's okay. Therefore the word asti or any of these words, satyam, asti is same as satyam, jnanam, anandam, anantam, the word meaning that you get for when you apply it to anything within the Jagat cannot be the same meaning that you apply when you talk about Atma.
So, like it is saying that when I show you the, let's say, gold ornaments, so I will say, okay, so this bangle is not gold and this bracelet is not gold. So to get that, the person may not think that, okay, apart from these things, there's something else called gold. So I will say like all these elements, like gold, but the gold exists without these elements as well. So immanent and transcendent at the same time.
So I said, as long as you understand it correctly, the problem with words when you talk to people, as long as you understand it correctly and what you say they understand correctly, you're okay.
Yes,
they understand what you're saying and you understand exactly what you're saying, there's no problem.
Yes,
but
because Swamiji
you know
has said
that anything that is in the Jagat, when you say it is Satyam or it is Jnanam or it is Anandam, it is not the same meaning when you use the same words for Atma. Let's continue the reading. I'm sure you will get more inputs on this question of yours. You know, when people in Ramakrishna Mission explain like this, they would have had a purpose behind in their mind for explaining this. In point of fact, I personally believe that, in fact, I saw one wonderful translation. I did the translation from Sanskrit, where he says even acharyas like Ramanujacharya or Madhavacharya, they understood Advitiya Brahman, but they felt that their people will not understand Advaya Brahman. Therefore, they tried to simplify it, water it down, and gave them a dose of Dvaitam, where it will increase bhakti, it will increase Ishwaratvam, all of that will help them eventually to this. This is his analysis of all these Dvaita and Vishishta Dvaita. It's quite possible. What you are trying to explain and what the person who is sitting in front of you understands, how he understands the word, that becomes important. That's why when we use words, we have to be extremely cautious to use the right word, and where there's a possibility that may be wrongly understood, take time to explain them. You know, many times people feel that in these classes, I'm repeating. I don't know how many of you feel that, but I know I'm repeating. I'm deliberately repeating. Because the communication has to be complete. No? I've said something with something in my mind. I want to be reasonably certain that everybody has got it the same way, and not because everybody has a different background. You have studied something of Ramakrishna Mission, you've studied something of other ISKCON, others have studied elsewhere. They have their own experience. So they tend to interpret things in their own way. I remember when early days, when I started studying Vedanta, when I heard people translate this Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma as what are the word this thing? Something bliss.
Existence consciousness bliss.
Huh?
Existence consciousness bliss.
And bliss. Only later I began to understand that you're not conveying the truth. You're conveying something which can be easily misunderstood. Even if you know it correctly and you're saying this, using those words, Swami is deadly against these things. Because he's so particular about how we convey the idea to the receiver. I mean, I have a lot of respect for people like in the Ramakrishna Mission. They're also highly studied Vedanta. They know the Vedanta. They've gone through all of the things. So when they say this, when a teacher in Ramakrishna Mission, Advaita Ashram says this, say it with a purpose. And if we take it in a way that we understand and then get confused, then our problem. In point of fact, even somebody like Prabhupada, although I don't recommend anybody read Prabhupada, his followers, they probably find it convenient to follow that kind of line of thinking. Easier. Whether Swami Prabhupada himself, he may have been a jnani, I don't know. But he deliberately watered it down for his the kind of disciples he had. I don't recommend any of you go and read Prabhupada because you will immediately get confused. Till you have absolutely got the grip on this, don't read anything else. After you're sure of yourself, read everything, doesn't matter. Then you can see where the author is trying to lead, where the teacher is trying to lead. Yeah, can we continue?
Yes, Swami. Even things that exist, like the world that you experience now, Jagat Asti Iti, is not the same always. Jagat Asti, but then Jagat undergoes a change. Every moment there is a change. Even our solar system is not the same. It is always changing. The earth is moving. The sun is also not seen in the same place as you see it now because earth is moving. Everything is changing. Therefore, some kind of pratyabhijna is there. But at the same time, there is no cognition of the same object a second time. You recognize the object the second time. You do not cognize the same object. Like in a river, although water is flowing, you do not cognize the same water again because it has flown down. Similarly, in the flow of time, anything that occurs in time, in your perception, that particular object, when you see it again, it is not the same object. It has undergone some change, but still there is a pratyabhijna. Also, while this Jagat, which seems to exist, undergoing changes when you are awake, that whole Jagat is gone once you go to sleep. In sleep, it is not there. For you, it is not there. Therefore, this Jagat is Trikala Abhaditan Jagat iti you cannot say. That means you cannot say it is not subject to negation in all three periods of time. You cannot give the attribute Trikala Abhaditvam to the Jagat. There is only one thing that is Trikala Abhadita. What? The one who is there even in deep sleep, that Sakshi, the witness, Sakshi of the deep sleep, that Sakshi Chaitanya is not subject to waking up or dreaming, because in sleep also it is awake. That which is awake in my sleep is not going to awake, it is not going to wake up. Understand? This is what they call Alupta Chaitanya. The Chaitanya which does not go to sleep, and does not wake up. The mind goes to sleep, the mind wakes up, and Chaitanya illumines the mind's sleeping and the mind's waking up. And that Chaitanya alone is always present, Alupta Chaitanya. That Alupta Chaitanya, Atma, is not subject to time. The Jagat is subject to time. If the Atma also is subject to time, then there will be a time when Atma is absent. Question: let there be absence of Atma. Why not? Swami, there is no absent Atma. There may be an absent-minded Atma. Understand? When you say it is an absent-minded
An
Atma,
absent-minded Atma is not possible. If there, the Atma must be the individual, the Ahankara perhaps. How can he say absent-minded Atma? The Atma doesn't have any mind.
yes, Swamiji. Swamiji says there Atma means Antakarana. There is no
Ah.
absent Atma.
Divyan said something?
Swamiji, so Swamiji said that Atma is not Trikala Abhadita. But like the questioner can say, right, ki, okay, in your perception, Jagat is not Trikala Abhadita. So the questioner can say, okay, so in your perception, the Jagat is gone in the sleeper's perception, but Jagat is there. Like if I see from the other, like, matlab ki, from other person's perspective, the Jagat is still there. So this argument does not hold, right?
Swami has already said, no, that Jagat is constantly changing. Even in a waking time, Jagat is changing.
True.
It is not the same Jagat. For you individually, what do you know exists? Only what you can perceive.
Yes.
What you cannot perceive, you cannot say exists. In the sleep, you don't perceive. So as far as you are concerned, Jagat is, okay, I use a different word, is unmanifest.
For the like the individual, right?
Correct. For the other people who are awake, Jagat is continuing to progress, continues to change, continues to keep altering. But the person whose mind has gone to sleep, whose antakarana is no more available, as far as he is concerned, the Jagat is unmanifest.
Yes.
No, you don't worry into this kind of very fine arguments. All he's trying to show is that Jagat is subject to time. Atma is not subject to time. That is all the argument.
Okay. No, but like there is always this confusion, right? So there is a point of view of me being the subjective, right? My experience is real. If that is not my experience, it does not exist. And on the other side, I can say, okay, so if it might not be my experience personally, but still the thing may be there. So let's say if a person is blind, right? So for his experience, he can say, okay, though visibly the world does not exist, but for other people it exists. So we can say, okay, so it is only your problem that your eyes are not working. So that's why you don't see the Jagat, but Jagat is. So there are always two perspectives,
Eyes are
right?
not the only thing. You feel the Jagat also, perceive the Jagat. That's the word.
Unlike visible, I
So a
meant
blind
visible.
person is not a good example. Sleep is an example because everything goes unmanifest.
Huh.
Yeah.
So for
But
the individual's perspective, the Jagat is, but you're going into such fine
yeah,
points
I
about
think
what are you trying to prove?
yeah, this argument does not hold good in this context. The argument that you said. That is why Swamiji explained the sequence just now. What is the first sentence? Keep that in mind and then go to the second sentence. You are jumping to the second sentence and inferring something else.
No, Swamiji said that
No.
Jagat
Our
is Trikala
Swamiji here just now he explained first sentence is about Jagat being constantly changing.
changing.
Do you
Yes.
accept that or not?
Yes.
Good. Good. Now there is just Puja Swamiji is now doing a deep dive into an individual perspective after that. That's all. So the second sentence is just a deep dive into an individual perspective, not to bring out arguments about my perspective or your perspective.
Right. Okay.
That's all.
Okay. So like if even if we say that Jagat is changing, that also makes it uh, Trikala Baditvam, right? Because it got changed.
Correct. That is proven, right? That is known fact.
Yeah. So
Jagat is
that makes it
constantly
Badita.
changing. Nobody can say it is only from my point of view.
हाँ ठीक है. Okay.
Gone. So that's why I said the first sentence is the most important one. Second sentence was more of a deep dive into an individual perspective. That's all. Not to discuss different perspectives.
Okay, let's continue.
I'll read from Swamiji's point. There is no absent
Questioner,
Atma.
read from there. Let there
Yeah,
be
yeah.
absence of Atma, why not?
Okay. Yes, Swami. Questioner, let there be absence of Atma. Why not? Swamiji, there is no absent Atma. There may be an absent-minded Atma. Understand? When you say it is an absent-minded Atma, there Atma means Antakarana. There is no absent Atma. Questioner, why not? Because if there is an absent Atma, you have to see that absent. You have to see the absent Atma. My Atma is absent. Who can see this? How can you make a statement without knowing? Questioner, no, I know. Swamiji, what do you know? That my Atma is absent. Swamiji, how do you know? Questioner, because I saw. Swamiji, where did you see? Questioner, in deep sleep, I saw. Swamiji, in deep sleep, what did you see? Questioner, the Atma was absent. Swamiji, to say Atma was absent, there should be Atma. There should be Atma. The one who sees this absence is the Atma. When you say Atma was absent, what was absent was your mind. The mind was absent, but you were very much there, lighting up the mind's absence. The unfortunate thing is, when you say existence, the orientation of the pramata is always in terms of kala. So, kala parichinnam alone, kalena avachinnam alone is understood as existent or non-existent. Gataha san, pataha san. But the fact is, it is just the opposite. The sun or Sakti or Sat, whatever, whatever, whether it is masculine or feminine or neuter, that that us, uh,
Tatvartha.
datvartah asti, that datvartasya na nashaha at all, at any time.
Yes,
There is no nasha
again
for
brought down
existence.
very nicely what Bhashyakara often brings out. No? For Nya also, which will come in the next verse hopefully, He says the Nya Dhatvartha. Nya becomes the Nyatru, Jnanam and Nyayam. But the Nya Dhatvartha remains the same. So the distinction between what you see as Jnanam in the Jagat, as subject, object, and this thing, its observation itself, and that which is the very vastu on which all three depend. Whether you talk about Sat, whether you talk about Jnanam, whether you talk about Anantam or Anandam, it's the same logic. That's the difference between Patshartha and Lakshartha. Swamiji brought up for this also, but Bhashyakara in more than one place has talked about Dhatvartha.
There is no nasha for existence. Existence is always there. There is no abolition or is. Think of that. Is always there. Something else is gone. You can add something to is. Therefore, when you say the pot is, existence is not the attribute of the pot, but the pot is the attribute of existence. Pot is a Vishesha to existence. It is not Gataha Sun, it is Sun Gataha. What exists is in the form of pot. Further, what exists is in the form of space. What exists is in the form of time. What exists is in the form of Jagat. What exists is in the form of this perception or that perception. Therefore, what exists is what is. What is always is, but normally conditioned by knower, conditioned by knowledge. Let us help ourselves with this pot. What is this pot?
You must have picked up a pot to show this pot. Yes, Divyansh?
So Swamiji, does it make the is as Dravya?
I'm sorry, come again?
Does it make is as Dravya?
Don't even use Dravya. Dravya is a very specific this thing for Nayayikas. We don't even use the word Dravya. We use that because to show an argument, a logic. There is only one Vastu. That is Sat. As Dhatu. Sat Dhatvartha. Sat is isness. That never goes away. That is not subject to time.
No, like because Swamiji is saying that objects are the adjectives to the is. So that is Vishesha and Dravya again. So before we earlier proved that everything having qualities will decline. So
Right, I'm saying that was used to prove a certain logic. Let that be now. Don't go there.
okay.
Now you look at it this way only. Everything is. Gata is, Pata is, Jagat is, time is, space is. They all depend for their existence on the isness, which is what Swamiji called as Dhatvartha. Us to be. And that which is common in all of them, you want to call it the Adhisthana, Dravyam, whatever you want. Dravyam you don't call it because Dravyam is destructible. Dravyam has quality. These are not qualities. The pot is a non-self-existing vastu. Time is a non-self-existing vastu. Jagat is a non-self-existing, for want of a better word, vastu. They all depend on Brahman for their existence, Atma on their existence, for their existence. Because if you use words like Dravya, you have to be very careful. Then there are technical definitions for Dravya. And if you use Dravya and if you then go back to Nayayika's definition, then Atma is also Dravya. That's not where we go. The argument that are given, keep it for that bit, don't carry it forward.
Swamiji, and I think here maybe the sentence, um, existence is not the attribute of the pot, but the pot is the attribute of existence. I think that is
What is
what something
creating the
is.
confusion?
Yes,
You're right.
Swamiji, because Atma,
very-
like we say, Atma or Satyam does not have any attribute, and when here pot or Jagat or something is
You're
said as
right.
an
That is what is
attribute
creating
of,
the confusion.
We have to
The-
qualify as though.
I would only say this much, that the editing of that has they slipped through. Sorry, you were saying something there?
cannot.
No, I said we'll have to always carefully qualify as though, I said.
Yeah.
As though an attribute, that's all. It is not really an attribute.
Yeah, because in
You're right, you're
GHS
right.
also Swamiji
That's
has
why you have
used
to be very
this.
careful in these words. And who did the editing, they probably missed this, which is why the confusion.
So then it becomes, if a pot is blue, then we call it as blue pot. So if here Atma has Atma has an attribute of pot, then we can say that is pot Atma or whatever Atma it is. But it doesn't work. So here the pot is not really an attribute of
No.
the existence, but it is just to show that pot doesn't exist independently. Okay, so what is this pot? A clay pot. This is the orientation. I just want to show you what is an orientation. You say this is a clay pot. When you say clay pot, then pot becomes the substantive. This is the orientation, a linguistic orientation. A pot is a substantive, an object. Clay is an adjective. Pot is the object, clay is the adjective. Correct? Yes, Swamiji. There are many types of pot. Pot is a jati. This is why jati is a problem. Look, pot is a jati. There are many types of pot. There is a clay pot, there is a brass pot, there is a silver pot, there is a copper pot, there is a belly pot. There are varieties of pots. Therefore, we are constrained to give an adjective to this pot to distinguish it from other pots. What is that? Clay pot. Is that true? If this pot exists independent of clay, only then can clay be an attribute to the pot. The poor pot itself does not exist independent of clay. All that is there is clay. What is the weight of this pot? Just give me an estimate. The weight is, say, 100 grams. Alright, let it be 100 grams. 100-gram pot. Now, that 100 grams, that weight, does it belong to the pot or does it belong to clay? You say it belongs to the pot. Okay, let me break the pot and put the whole thing on the balance. What will I have? I will have 100 grams of clay. Therefore, what is the weight of the pot? The pot is already gone. So, what is the weight of the pot? 0. Clay was 100 grams and now also it is 100 grams. Therefore, the weight of the pot is 0. That is why we say 100 grams of clay plus pot is still 100 grams. Purnam adaha purnam idam purnasya purnamadaya purnameva avashishyate. The same 100 grams. Where is the pot? Do you require magic here? You know, some fellows produce a pot somewhere up the sleeves. They keep the pot and produce it, or from the hat they produce it. And you think it is big magic. It is nothing. This is magic, sir. This is magic. Which is magic? Holding the pot in your hand and proving it does not exist at all. Pot does not exist independent of clay. Pot is not sitting upon clay. Pot is not in the clay. It is not outside clay. It is not on the clay. There is only clay. It is not on clay. Understand? Therefore, what is pot? It is just a name. It does not exist. But it is useful, alright. Who says it cannot be useful? A pot can hold water, and because there can be a broken pot, Therefore, they can be a useless pot also.
Okay, we'll stop here today. We'll continue on the next class. Very interesting arguments, aren't they? Don't look at, independently each sentence and then try to make a decision of it. Look at the larger picture of what Swami is trying to show based on the verse. This is 22. We will have also similar ones coming up in the other verses. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om